Peace, blessings, and enough love to each and everyone in this webinar, in this room, in this house. We thank you very much for attending this webinar, and we do have a special, very special guest with us. And but before we start this webinar, which is the Haiti Caribbean Love on Passive webinar on this May, oh my goodness, almost half of the year already, May the 5th, 2022. And as you know, we start with our lovely international singer, the one that we come to love so dearly, of course, Lirato, and In It to Win It. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. In it to win it. Definitely. All right. Thank you very much, Lorato. Really appreciate. Without any further ado, our special guest presenter at this time, as we know, that one of the things, one of the main product that everyone have on their mind is Oh Bless. And with Oh Bless, it brings about restoring humanity. And one of the things that many persons are looking at is different ways to assist humanity. And so housing come into play because people are homeless. Clean water come into play because people in this day and age, surprisingly, don't have clean water. Don't know why. Corruption, I guess. People in this day and age don't have electricity. People in this day and age don't have somewhere to live. So with all of these discussion in Oh Bless, most of us are looking at renewable energy because actually, it's presented as something just good and always good. There's always pros about renewable energy, and we need to stop using fossil fuel because it is damaging our life here on planet Earth. And so we have a special guest today who has been doing over 15 years of research. He has his Bachelor of Science in agricultural economics. He also has his associate in science, in nursing also. He also has a diploma in agriculture. He is an ordained deacon, man of God, and he's also an interior and exterior landscaper. So yes, he would put his business right there on Ohio. And of course, he's an amateur online researcher. And as we said, he did over 15 years of extensive research with the difference between fossil fuel and, of course, renewable energy. So without any further ado, we are going to turn over the entire presentation section of things to Sir Paul McFarlane.
Thank you so much, Dr. Derek. I want first of all to thank Mr. Ash for delivering this forum where we can all improve our lives and improve the world. I also view Unpassive as a means of building leadership in all our lives. When you have good leadership, you can manage your assets better. And since we all expect an improvement in our asset base, and the leadership to manage that assets or those assets will really come in handy. So I want to thank Mr. Ash and thank all the Unpassive leaders for helping us along that path. And thank you all for being here. We want to make this presentation interesting. We will have a quiz at the end, and we will see who can do best on that quiz. So let's go right into it. Okay, so the general topic, the pros and cons of fossil fuels and renewable energies. And this is not going to be a negative presentation. We are going to identify some challenges to overcome, which is where Unpassive and researchers can focus to enable us to improve the lives of all human beings. Let's go to the first slide. So we're going to start with fossil fuels, and there's basically three main types, which most of us are all familiar with: coal, natural gas, and petroleum. And these are all used worldwide in different countries, in different percentages. Some countries have natural deposits, and they have what we call a competitive advantage. Some countries have no deposits, and they have what we call a competitive disadvantage in that area. So let's first address the cons or the negatives of fossil fuels. Some of these you will have heard of before. Some of them may be new to you. And some of the negatives of both fossil fuels and renewable energies will overlap. So it can be a very controversial area. So fossil fuels produce carbon dioxide, and this can be a very controversial topic because carbon dioxide contributes to global warming. That claim has been made. Carbon dioxide also has its uses, and we will address those uses later. There's environmental damage from fossil fuels, and that can happen at different stages. The mining of fossil fuels can damage the environment. Sometimes we have an oil spill, as there was Exxon Valdez that happened years ago. That can damage the ocean. That can kill millions of fishes in the sea. At the processing stage also, we have a negative effect on the environment. Water runoff, if not disposed of properly, can contaminate the earth, can contaminate our drinking water, and that can cause a nasty effect on our health. Now, there's an extreme breathing hazard from air pollution, and mining for coal is really guilty in this area. Coal miners suffer from a particular disease, damage to their lungs if they don't protect their lungs properly. And that is something that we have never really overcome to any great degree. In addition, when the pollutants enter the atmosphere, even folks who are not miners can be damaged from the pollutants in the air. So if you live near a coal mine, you need to take real precaution because you can breathe in some of those pollutants. Right, let's go to the next slide. As we said, fossil fuels contribute to global warming through the production of carbon dioxide. And that, again, is a very controversial topic. I mean, we could spend days and weeks and months just discussing this one because there's a disagreement on both sides of the spectrum. Some scientists are adamant that it does contribute to global warming, but there's a growing body of scientists that will try to refute those claims, and they've been arguing over this one for years. There's also a claim of depletion. In other words, we are going to run out of fossil fuels. Now, this claim has been made for decades. They call it peak oil. But what seems to happen every few years, someone makes a major discovery. We had a major discovery of natural gas that happened in the Middle East a few years ago. And now they're projecting that there's 100-year supply of natural gas. So even though the claim has been made, and theoretically it looks like it could happen, we're just not there yet. The other negative of fossil fuels is it can take a long time to be produced. I mean, you don't just get up tomorrow and say, I'm going to make some natural gas. I get up tomorrow, I'm going to make some petroleum deposit. These are produced by some natural processes in the earth where the organic matter is broken down, is compressed, can take thousands of years. So if you're a small country and you are waiting for the earth to produce some fossil fuel deposits for you, you might have a long wait. Let's go to the next slide. Now let's take a look at the positives of fossil fuels. And as Dr. Derek mentioned, some of these you might not have heard about. There's not a lot of focus on this area for whatever reason. Generally, fossil fuels tend to be more cost-effective and efficient than renewable energies. And we are going to explain why that is. Some people will disagree, but we think the evidence tends to point strongly in this direction. And generally also, there's a huge amount of energy that can be produced from fossil fuels at one location. And this is a tremendous advantage. As we said earlier, They are produced by natural processes of the earth. So we don't have to build a manufacturing plant to manufacture the raw petroleum. The earth does that for us. That's a tremendous advantage. Go to the next slide. The ease of transport from point A to point B is tremendous advantage. We build pipelines that traverse thousands of miles. There's one that Russia has been built to provide natural gas to Europe. Very controversial, but it's a great way to transfer natural gas. It's a great way to transfer liquid petroleum. You put it in a pipeline, you turn it on, and there you go. You can also put it in trucks, in barrels. So it's easy, fairly easy to be transported. One of the great advantages of fossil fuels is they can produce energy in almost any location, at any time of the day or night, under any geographical or weather conditions. Probably the only place you can produce energy from fossil fuels is under the ocean. But this is a tremendous advantage. It's very flexible, and it's really comes in handy. Let's go to the next slide. Now, the constant and reliable flow of energy from fossil fuels is a tremendous plus. If you have a hospital, you don't want your energy to be interrupted. You need a constant flow of energy for your operating room to keep the air conditioning flowing. Energy interruption can be devastating, and we'll mention a few examples. So this constant and reliable flow is really, really, really key. In addition, there are numerous useful and irreplaceable byproducts for medicine, industry, and consumer convenience. Now, you wouldn't believe how many different byproducts there are. And this is going to be one of our quiz questions when we finish. But some of these byproducts are absolutely essential. I mean, we just went through a severe pandemic. And what most folks don't realize, 80 to 90% of the PPEs, personal productive equipment, are byproducts of fossil fuels. The face masks, the gowns, the gloves, the face shields, byproducts of fossil fuels. So fossil fuel can make a very strong claim to have literally saved humanity from, I don't know, perhaps extinction. Because if we had lost our doctors and our nurses, where would we be? This is one advantage you rarely hear in the media. You rarely hear from our presidents. Not sure why, but without this significant advantage, we would be in serious problems. Here's another very strong association. There's a strong association between fossil fuels and life extension. Strong association between fossil fuels and poverty alleviation, believe it or not. There's a strong association between fossil fuels and the improvement in the quality of life index. Now let's talk a little bit about association. In science, when two things go together, we say there's an association. Now, because two things happen together does not mean one causes the other. So sometimes you have to really examine very closely. However, when you see several associations in different geographical locations, it's time to take a serious look and time to attribute cause. We know that when fossil fuels first came on stream, it led to the development of many products and many equipment which have just contributed significantly to the quality of life. Imagine the first time you went into an air-conditioned office. Imagine how that felt. Imagine the first time you drank ice water on a hot summer day. Imagine how that felt. No, the refrigerators and the air-conditioned equipment, they are powered by fossil fuels. When you look at the extension of the lifespan, because of what fossil fuels have done for medicines, for the health industry, there's a direct association that can be made between fossil fuels use and the extension of our life. Poverty alleviation, one of the key things that is needed to overcome poverty is affordable energy. If energy is not affordable, it's difficult for poor persons to really overcome poverty. And we are going to show you a more closer association later on that one particular point. Now, there are many industries which just simply could never exist without fossil fuels. Imagine space exploration. Space travel, power in the Challenger. You know, when the spacecraft takes off, there's a huge explosion of fire at the base that powers it off into the atmosphere. There's a secondary boost from a rocket that falls away and it takes off. So you tell me, how can you power a space rocket with a wind turbine? Is that possible? How can you power a submarine with solar panels? Not possible. Food packaging, vaccines, you know, the syringes. If you've got an injection during the pandemic, you look at the syringe, you know, this is one part of it that's metal. There's another part of it that's like plastic. Where do you think that came from? Byproduct of fossil fuels. So the byproducts have just been tremendous for humanity, and we just really can't exist without them. So when you hear some folks try to tell us that we need to get rid of fossil fuels 100%, I don't know how we're going to do that, because their contribution is undeniable. Let's go to the next slide. Now let's turn to renewable energies, and there are several different ones. You have solar, there's wind, there's hydro, which is produced from waterfalls. There's biomass, which, you know, you burn certain products to get energy. There's geothermal. You know, there's heat. Certain parts of the earth, there's strong concentration of heat in the crust. And liberating that heat can be used to produce energy. And there's two more, which are not really significant. There's marine and biofuels. Now, marine is from the ocean. When the ocean waves move back and forth, if you could capture that energy, you could transform that into energy that we can use. And biofuels are a very less significant part of that picture. So let's look at the pros or the positives of renewable energies. Now, a strong claim can be made that where fossil fuels are unavailable, the only alternative is to get a solar installation or to install a wind turbine, right? So there's no defense against that. And there are certain parts of the world, if you're on top of the Himalayas, put up a wind turbine. The sun might not shine very strong there, but your only alternative is probably be a wind turbine. Fossil fuels also do release less carbon dioxide. Renewable energies do release less carbon dioxide than fossil fuels. And there's no debate about that. Renewable energies do release some carbon dioxide, but not as significant. And we will get into that a little later. There's also a very short production time for renewable energies. When the sun comes up, it's available immediately. Once it starts shining, the energy travels from the sun 93 million miles away, and it's here. When the wind blows, it's available instantly. You don't need to wait 1,000 years for the wind to arrive. It's just here. So the production time is short, it's instantly available, and that's a tremendous advantage. The sun is virtually inexhaustible. I don't think we're going to run out of sun anytime soon. And those scientists that say that, well, the sun will burn itself out, I'm sure we can guarantee one thing: they will die much sooner than the sun. Wind is also abundant. Doesn't blow all the time, but when it does, there's wind. It's just abundant. Now, number 5, many scientists make the claim that renewable energies fight global warming. And this is also another very controversial area. Some scientists agree, some disagree. And we could debate that forever. But let's just say right now, they do fight global warming. One of the things that I think is very important is if we look at renewable energies in another way, they help to delay the depletion of fossil fuel. If we decide, yes, we need fossil fuels for the different byproducts, then we don't want to run out of them at all. We need to have it for a long time as possible. So a hybrid system where we use both is a win-win. You use fossil fuels for its essential byproducts, and you delay the depletion if is that going to happen? So in that instance, I would say that's also a tremendous positive for renewable energies. Just go to the next slide. Now let's turn to the negatives of renewable energies. And again, this is another area Dr. Derek mentioned. You might not hear much about, but the facts are the facts, and the science is the science, and the observational evidence is the observational evidence. Sometimes what you see, you can't deny. One other thing that I mentioned is I think the naming, the phrase renewable energy is not a correct phrase. It's a brilliant marketing phrase, but when you look at these renewable energies, they are essentially intermittent. The wind doesn't blow all the time. The sun doesn't shine all the time. 15 years ago, I think Brazil supplies 80% of its energy from hydroelectric plants, but they had a massive drought. And the rains didn't fall for 1 year, for 2 years. Little rain fell 3 years, 4 years. The hydroelectric plants dried up. The rivers dried up. They had to import fossil fuels, cost them billions of dollars to replace the lost energy. So the intermittent characteristic of renewable energies is a severe disadvantage. And it's very difficult to overcome. There's a way to not fully overcome, but to try to negate it, and we'll get into that. Now, renewable energies are indeed more costly and less efficient than fossil fuels, and it relates directly to their intermittency. If something is intermittent, you need a backup. That backup costs money. And when you spend money, you have to recover it if you're a business. So when governments invest in huge, expensive battery backup systems, they pass that expense on to the ratepayers. And that is one way in which your electricity bill goes up. And we're going to explain the less efficient part of it in a minute, and how that applies and where that arrives from. Now, interestingly, the raw materials that are used to make the solar panels and the wind turbines are mined from the earth. So both fossil fuels and renewable energies involve mining. So the mining from the earth can also damage the environment and can also damage human beings. In the Congo a few years ago, there was a huge story about the children that were in the mines digging for metals, for cobalt and lithium with their bare hands to make some money. Children, 10 years old, thousands of them. Now, that's not the fault of the renewable energy. It's an opportunity that was there. The children need to make money, and their health was seriously affected. So when we look at the restrictions, geography is a significant restriction to renewable energies. If you live near the equator, for instance, your solar panel will generate more energy than if you live in Alaska. And it's all because of the sun. The sun is more intense at the equator than it is in Alaska. The time of the day is significant. As we all could see, when the sun goes down at night, we say the sun goes down, but the sun doesn't really go down. The earth revolves around the sun. The solar panel doesn't produce any energy. In a hurricane, if a hurricane covers an island for an entire week, that's a week of no solar energy. The same thing with the wind. When the wind dies down, there's less energy from the wind turbines. And certain parts of the earth, the winds are much stronger than other parts. So these are some things that we really need to take note of. Now let's go to the next slide. Now, this is another area that you rarely hear about, but the observational facts are the facts. And we would be foolish to deny them. The environmental damage from wind turbines and solar panels on the bird and insect populations worldwide has just been devastating. Just last week, there was a study came out of California, and they looked at the impact of the renewable energy on the bird populations. You know, birds seem to be attracted to these spinning wind turbines. Not sure why. And they just fly right into them and get torn to bits. So the study in California definitively showed that the renewable energy facilities had decreased the population of the birds. Just this past week, the DOJ in the USA filed a lawsuit against a wind turbine company because the wind turbines had killed some rare eagles. And in the United States, they don't make joke about their animals when they're put on a rare list. But this has been going on for quite a while. So it took them a real long time to really go after these wind turbine companies. Now, our insects are needed for agricultural purposes, right? For pollination, to attack each other, to keep their own selves, keep their own population in check. And when the wind turbines decimate that population, the estimate for worldwide insect killed by wind turbines is into the billions. I mean, very hard to estimate, but you can use advanced mathematics and estimate that. And this is another controversial subject which you might never have heard about. WTS, wind turbine syndrome. Dr. Nina Pierpont of New York State was, I think, the first person to put forward a suggested diagnosis for wind turbine syndrome. What is wind turbine syndrome? Well, when the wind turbines spin, they emit a low noise. And many residents who live close to wind turbines have complained that their sleep is disturbed, their balance is disturbed, and they just can't get good rest. And many people refuse to even accept that there is such a thing. But again, the observational evidence is clear. Several of these residents have sued wind turbines and have won. And significant sums have been paid out. I mean, $600,000 is not pennies. So if there was not something called a wind turbine syndrome, why would the court rule for the residents? The Australian Supreme Court has made a finding that wind turbine can have a damaging impact on people's health. And even the World Health Organization, believe it or not, has produced a guideline for wind turbines and how they are to be installed and spaced within a population. So there's an acknowledgement from some authorities that this is something that is having an effect. A lot of wind turbines are installed offshore, get them away from humans. But you know what? Our marine life is important too. And believe it or not, again, very controversial subject, but many scientists claim that the wind turbines, the sound that affect human beings, also affecting the marine life. Our soil insects are very important. When you establish a solar farm that covers hundreds of acres, what do you think will happen to the insects beneath those panels? They are deprived of sun. If they can't find their way to soil where there's sun, they're just gonna die. Now those large solar plants, there's one in California, huge one, that it's a phenomenon to stand and watch. I haven't gone there to see it, but folks have described it. When the birds fly too close, they just fall out of the sky like a meteor. They just get incinerated. Again, these are things that are not discussed widely, but the observational evidence is staring us in the face, and it's time we really start to take a serious look. Now, when I say that renewable energies are grossly inefficient, there are three numbers that I have here, and I have a chart I'll show you at the end. These three numbers represent the amount of workers that it takes to produce the same amount of energy. Now, looking at these three numbers, we can tell that 79 is greater than 2, 2 is greater than 1. Which one would you think would represent solar? And which would you think would represent coal or natural gas? The chart I will show you comes from the federal government. And it takes 79 solar workers, 2 natural gas workers, and 1 coal worker produce the same amount of energy. So that's gross inefficiency right here. You could replace 79 workers with 1. When you look at the land space that is needed to install these renewable energy plants, there's a large amount of land space that's needed. So there's a large input to the output. You need a lot of land. I mean, they're talking about powering the earth with renewable energies. You would just take up so much land space that it would just put a huge stress on the environment. And I don't really think it's feasible whatsoever. Right, let's go to the next slide. Now, imagine you live in the Hamptons, you have a multi-million-dollar home, and somebody comes there and says, I want to build a wind turbine right here. can have a negative impact on your home valuations because the wind turbines tend to be really unsightly. When you look at the observational evidence, it's pretty clear. There's a very strong association between renewable energies and an increase in energy costs. Some people try to deny it, but again, I'm going to show you a chart that shows you the countries have the highest degree of renewable energies in the world, have the highest energy costs. And when you have some time, you can go and look up Germany. They're way up there, way up. A significant factor that most people overlook. When your energy cost goes up, your income is displaced. You have to spend more money to meet that energy bill. And if your income is limited, you have an increase in poverty rates. Now this just seems like logical thinking, but you have many economists who just simply deny this. The observational evidence, again, is pretty clear. And to back that up, we have 3 research studies that's in the literature: University of Chicago, Department of Economics, Portland State University, University of Berea in Europe, 15 years observation of the data. They've looked at the data for 15 years and come to the same conclusion. After a certain point, increase in renewable energies lead to a rise in poverty rates. And again, it's simple logical thinking. If your energy bill goes up, you're going to pay more money to meet that bill. And later we're gonna show you a scientific theory proven that really explains how this happened. Go to the next slide. Now, renewable energies also contribute to global warming. And again, imagine you need solar panel. You have to mine the earth to get some of the raw materials. What do you think is used to power those mining equipment? They're powered by fossil fuels, right? The tractors, the drilling equipment, the ships, if you're drilling in the ocean, they're powered by fossil fuels. So in a very weird way, renewable energies depend on fossil fuels. Now here's another topic, which is, I think it's going to get more focused in the next few years. Because of the intermittent nature of renewable energies, you need a backup. That backup is usually batteries. And those battery systems, they're fairly safe. There's been a tremendous improvement in the technologies, and they are fairly safe, but they can still malfunction. Just this past week, an EV bus in France just spontaneously exploded. Burned like a bomb. They pulled all the buses off the market to take a look and see what was going on. And that's happening in different parts of the world. In Australia, where they purchased one of Tesla's huge solar energy pack, last year one of them caught fire. It burned for 3 days. They could hardly put the flame out. And we're going to explain why those fires are hard to put out and why they are potentially dangerous, and some precautions you can take later. Now the solar panels and the wind turbines don't last forever. Most things that are physical runs out. The estimate is for solar panels last between 20 to 30 years. Maybe shorter, maybe longer. But eventually, they will run out. They will have to be replaced. So you're looking at billions of solar panels worldwide that's going to need to be replaced over the next, 10, 15, 20 years. Now the question is this: what are they going to do with those retired panels? If it's not economical to recycle them, they're going to have to bury them in the earth. So you're talking about an expansion of landfills. Again, damage to the environment. Another topic which you rarely hear about, what we call grid inertia. When you have an energy grid, in order for the energy to have the greatest impact, it needs to flow seamlessly and smoothly and constantly. Now, when the sun gets up in the morning and it starts shining, all those millions of solar panels start to produce energy right away. According to the agreement in many countries, the excess energy is diverted to the local utility. So when this huge amount of energy comes in instantly to the utility, if they don't have software to handle that, that can disturb the grid stability. And it has happened before and lead to blackouts. And energy blackouts can be catastrophic. The reverse is also serious. When the sun gets covered, the solar panels' energy production instantly drops to zero. So you have an immediate shortfall in a grid. So if you don't have a system in place to replace that shortfall as quickly as possible, you have a problem. The same concept with the wind turbines. When the wind stops blowing, there's an instantaneous decrease in production of energy. If you don't have a backup to replace that shortfall, you have a problem, right? We saw last year in Texas where they had a major blackout. And in Texas, the wind turbines there provide 15% energy to the grid. The temperature fell below freezing. The wind turbines froze. Now, did that cause a blackout? Very controversial area. Some people say, no, it didn't. But if you have a 15% loss of energy, that can't be a good thing, right? Let's go to the next slide. So let's briefly talk about what really explains the differences in the efficiencies between fossil fuels and renewable energies. This is a law that I studied in high school. Didn't tell me what the usefulness of it was, but this is one of the most established laws of science. The second law of thermodynamics of physics, one of the most established law of science. And to make it pretty simple, this is really what it's saying. In order for energy to do work, energy must be concentrated. Or to put another way, the more concentrated the energy source is, the more efficient it is. The more efficient it is, the more work it can do. So when you look at the solar energy, it comes from the sun, arrives at the earth, it's diffused, it's not concentrated. In order to become as efficient as possible, it has to be concentrated. And that's the function of the solar panel. The solar panel tries to concentrate the solar energy, then it releases it and it can do work. But that second step is a major hurdle. That is what contributes partly to its expense. Same thing with the wind turbine. The function of the spinning turbine is to concentrate the wind energy at a point and produces energy. Now, fossil fuels in their natural state, they are already concentrated. So they don't need a second step. You just need to release the energy. So there's one less step involved. Now to make this thing pretty simple, when I was a boy, I used to fight a lot. The older boy used to make me fight my cohorts. When you're going to punch somebody, you tend to wind up your arm. You draw your arm back to punch. When you draw your arm back, you have a greater impact when you punch somebody than if you just punch with your arm extended. Now that winding up of the arm is a concentration effort of the in energy. Same thing with a baseball pitcher. When he winds up, he's concentrating his energy. He's using the second law of thermodynamics. When a cricketer bowls a ball, same thing. So this law is in use all the time in your daily life. You just don't think about it. But it's the major reason why there's a difference in efficiency and in expense between fossil fuels and renewable energies. And there's really no way to get around this. Renewable energies have come down in cost significantly, and they're trying to get it down even more. And sometimes I see claims in the press where they say a solar plant is producing energy at 3 cents per kilowatt hour, 6 cents per kilowatt hour. In Costa Rica, I think they produce 90% of energy from renewable energies. And I hear their energy rates are really good. But I went to take a closer look because I know the laws of physics are the laws of physics, and it's established. And what I found, Costa Rica spent billions of dollars investing in renewable energy plants. Their utility, I think now is up to $40 billion in debt. So it's pretty clear that they have not passed on the cost of that investment to their ratepayers. If they had, their rates would not be what they were. So this again is the main reason which I've never heard of anybody in the press discuss this. I rarely hear physicists discuss this. I try to get a hold of some of them sometime, and they're really hard to get a hold of. They don't want to respond. But this law is a real hurdle. There may be a way to overcome it, and we'll talk about that later, but we have to recognize what it is if you want to overcome it. Let's go to the next slide. Now let's talk a little bit about lithium. Lithium is a metal that is one of the main components that I use in the solar electric vehicle batteries. And if you remember from your chemistry, Lithium is in a group of metal called the alkali group of metals, highly flammable. One of the things that my high school chemistry teacher did, took a piece of lithium without we know what was going to happen and dropped it in a glass of water. The thing exploded instantly and burned furiously. How could a metal burn in water? But that is in nature of lithium. It's a very light metal, highly conductive. So it's in widespread use in batteries worldwide. But we need to understand that it ignites easily. And when I say it burns ferociously, if you own a Tesla, you need to be aware that it's a very rare possibility, but it can happen. Some of them have exploded, and when the firefighters show up, most times they just stand by and wait till it burns out, because the ferocity of the fire and the ability of lithium, you don't want to put water on it. So these batteries are still fairly safe, but whenever they're damaged, if you have one of these batteries and it's damaged, you might want to consider getting rid of it. Whenever they're shorted out, which you can't tell because the short happens inside, or if it's been contaminated during the production process, then that can cause fires. And again, these fires are ferocious. If you have a solar system at your home and you have a battery pack, if you ever catch fire, you need to let the fire department know that you have one, so that they can take precautions. Because if they don't know, they come in pouring water all over the place, it could be a problem. I mean, a very dangerous problem. We talked about this earlier. The Tesla battery system in Australia burned for 3 days, and the bus in France was spontaneously exploded. So you're traveling on these EV buses. I mean, you don't want to live in fear, but you might want to make note of where the battery is and don't sit in that area, just as a precaution. Doesn't happen very often, but when it does, I mean, you won't forget what these fires look like. So we need to take some precautions with lithium batteries. Those fires require special fire extinguishers. You don't want to put water on it because, like we said, lithium burns ferociously in water. Store them out of the sunlight, a cool area, not too hot, not too cold. That's if you have lithium batteries, you might want to have one in your home for whatever reason. If you purchase one and you don't decide what to do with it yet. Certainly when you're charging them, don't leave it and go to the supermarket. You want to be around in case something happens. And certainly don't store one in the bedroom. And please be cautious with modern devices that have fairly large size of lithium batteries. In New York City, there was a story out this week. E-bikes have become real popular. And when I saw the amount of e-bike fires that are taking place over the past year, it changed my mind about buying one because I was really thinking about it. I mean, I hadn't realized there were that many fires. I said, no, I think I'm going to give a pass until this technology gets better. And the technology needs to improve. And we hope it can be done. We don't want this to be a negative presentation. We identified some challenges, and I have what I call here some Nobel Prize ideas. Anybody want a challenge for a Nobel Prize in physics? Here's some ideas. Now, number one, this may already be in use. I'm not sure. But if it's not, there certainly would be a high need for automatic intelligence software that could manage energy flows from attached solar and wind turbine systems coming into a grid. They might already have this. I would be surprised if this had not already been invented. But this really is an important development. There's certainly is an area that are a need for new or improved battery technology to reduce even further the chance of lithium battery fires and explosions. And I think they're working on this at the present time. But we need some new brilliant minds here. We need some new construction technology. Elon Musk is as brilliant a mind as there is. And he's building. He has built a mega factory in Texas to make these EV batteries. So we think he's doing the right thing in trying to make human life more comfortable. And so We just hope his scientists get on the ball and try to improve this area. Now, here is something that is a deep thinker. This might give us a brain cramp. Now, when a law of science is established, it's established, right? Those laws can't be broken. The law of gravity is the law of gravity. If you go out and the Empire State Building and you jump off, believe you me, you're gonna fall to the ground. If you don't fall to the ground, something is wrong with the law. But I don't know of anybody yet that has jumped off a building without a parachute and then fall to the ground. So the law of gravity can even tell you how fast you will fall. There's an equation that shows that. But you can exceed a law with force. So an airplane exceeds the law of gravity because there's tremendous force. There's tremendous force that propels it into the air. Same thing with the spacecraft. When you jump off the ground straight up, that jumping act, you are exceeding the law of gravity. Temporarily, you come back down, but that step of exceeding a law can be expensive, drive up costs. Here's another thing we can think about. Another way to exceed a law is when you operate in another dimension. So when you go to space, right, the law of gravity doesn't apply. If you're in the space station and you go outside because you want to go for a walk, you won't get back in. I don't think so. You float away, but you won't fall to earth. The law of gravity doesn't apply. Different environment. Now, my idea here is if some brilliant scientists could recreate, maybe build a huge factory somewhere, and you recreate the space atmosphere inside of that building, then maybe there's a possibility to tackle the second law of thermodynamics because you enter in another dimension. It's an idea. Not sure how valid it is. Something to think about, right? Something for researchers to double up. That one came out of my brain. So now we'll see where it goes. So those are some challenges that we have to face. And challenges are made to be tackled, not to be afraid of, not to shy away from, but to use our brains and our genius and confront them head on, not to deny them, but to see how we can best overcome and get around them. So let's go to our next slide here. And we're getting close to the end of the presentation. And I have a few quiz questions here for you all. You can try to type your answer in the chat. We have the answers down below. So here's number one question. If you install a solar system, you produce 100, there's 100 here, megawatt of energy in 24 hours. How would you accurately determine your production cost per hour? Because what most people don't realize, when you put a solar system on your house, you are now an electricity production plant. A small one, but you are producing energy. You are literally an electricity production plant. But what has not been done, no one has made an attempt, as far as I know, to calculate what it costs a homeowner to produce that solar energy. What does this cost per kilowatt hour? Here's a cost, and it can be calculated. So how would you determine what your cost is? What do you think you would go about doing that? Take a couple of seconds and think about that and write your answer down in the chat. How would you accurately determine your production cost if you have a solar system, or even if you have a wind turbine? Here's our number two question. I've seen the charts, when wind turbines produce energy, they produce a chart that shows you how much energy the wind turbine is producing per day. The chart is a monthly chart. So when you look at that chart, sometimes the production drops to zero. The chart falls down to the zero line. So on this particular chart, there were 20 times when the wind didn't blow at all. How much energy does the wind turbine farm produce when the wind turbine is not blowing? I think we mentioned that before. So everyone should get the answer to that one. How much energy does a wind turbine farm produces when the wind is not blowing? Write your answer in the chat and we'll review the answers below. Let's go to the next. Say you live in India. We have a lot of founders in India. The India Electricity Commission files a lawsuit in court. They're claiming that they're losing money when home solar panels and wind systems are connected to the grid. As you know, in certain countries, there's a law that you have to connect to the grid once you install a system. And they have a system they call net metering, where the utility compensates you for the excess energy. So say the India Electricity Commission says, wait a minute, I'm not making any money on this deal. They go to court and file a lawsuit. If you were the judge, what evidence would you need from the utility to decide in their favor? What would the utility have to show you to say, your claim is right, you're not making any money on this deal, shut this thing down? Because as a private company, you're required to make a profit on every business deal. Or else, why would you go in business? So take a couple of seconds and think about that. What would you need to show to have a judge rule and says, you don't need to have John Brown's solar system or Miss Susan wind turbine system connected to your grid? They must be disconnected. Maybe a tough question, but it's to think about it, the answer will come right to you. Let's go to the next question. In Texas last year, as we mentioned, the wind turbines froze. Now, there's a lot of smart people in Texas, a lot of geniuses. So it's kind of amazing that nobody looked to the future and asked the question, what's going to happen to our wind turbines if the temperature falls below zero? T. Boone Pickens, the billionaire, apparently didn't think about this. So there was a 15% reduction in the shortfall on the grid. What kind of idea, so just an idea for Governor Abbott, how would you prevent this from happening in the future? You know the wind turbine is 15% of the grid. If it freezes, you're gonna lose 15%. What would you suggest to Governor Abbott to prevent that shortfall from happening? Take a couple of minutes and think about that. Here's an idea that might work here. And our final question. We said that fossil fuels have tremendous different byproducts that are essential to the existence of human beings. Let's take a guess as to how many different fossil fuel byproducts you think there are in common use worldwide. What's the number that comes to your mind? What's the number of different byproducts of fossil fuels that are in common use worldwide? Fertilizers, plastic bags, sneakers, iPad covers. I mean, you could go on and on and on and on and on. Take a couple of minutes and come up with a number. If you get this one accurate, I'll give you a star. Armandine is excluded because I think she knows what it is. All right, let's go to the next slide here. Oh wow, we have the quiz answers.
Don't copy mine, because I got it wrong on purpose.
You got it wrong on purpose? Let me go to the answers now, Doc.
Don't copy on me for that one. No, because I had an unfair advantage, so I didn't want to use it. But now that you put me out, I'll put it down.
Okay. So there's a formula how you calculate what your energy is that you produce at home. It's a very extensive complicated formula called the LCOE, the leverage cost of energy. And you just get that formula, pump the numbers in, and you will come up with what your cost is. I mean, you can Google LCOE, you'll get different, a more in-depth explanation if you want to take a look at it.
Probably, yeah, we'll probably get a calculator.
Yes, there's also, right, Armand, there is a calculator that'll do the short work for you. There is an energy calculator with this formula built in that makes short work of it.
So this question was not for us to actually figure out today, right?
No, this is just for you to, how would you, the answer was you need a formula. You need a mathematical formula.
Get us thinking, yes.
Because you would need to, some of you don't even own a solar, so you wouldn't be able to do that. All right, let's go to the quiz answer number 2. And what everyone should have gotten this one. The amount of energy a wind turbine produces when the wind fails when the wind fails to blow is 0. A wind turbine only produces energy when the wind turbine spins. So if the turbine freezes or wind speed falls too low, it produces 0 energy at those times. I mean, this is just a major hurdle for wind turbines. Absolutely major, major, major hurdle. And here again, they're going to need a backup battery systems, which are very expensive and drive up the overall cost.
Yeah, I got that right.
So everyone should have got that one right. Let's go to quiz answer number 2.
Let me see the chat. Very few answers over here.
Nobody got that one right?
Oh, I see a 0 from Jenny, from Jeannie, 0. Someone said 2. That had to be me or something, but I don't remember putting it in. Okay. I don't remember what I put that 2 in for anyway. Somebody said none or 0. Yeah, a lot of zeros. Good job, guys.
Great. Good job, guys. So quiz answer number 3. This was the utility in India that went to court and filed lawsuit. If you were the judge, you would need to see the production costs from the utility and compare it to the production costs from the outside solar farm or wind farm, right? So if the utility is producing energy at 15 cents per kilowatt hour and your home is producing energy at 30 cents per kilowatt hour, why should the utility purchase from you? Your cost is higher. Now, as far as I know, there is no work has been done anywhere on this. This idea might, I'm not sure, might be unique to myself. I don't know if I've never heard anyone discuss this. I haven't read about it anywhere else. But to me, it's just common sense. A private company should be allowed to make a profit and should not be forced into unprofitable behavior. So if it's going to buy a product from you and it's making the same product, it should ask you what is your cost, but they don't do that. And I don't know why the utilities haven't woken up to this fact. If when the judge in India see that John Brown cost is 30 cents and the utilities cost is 10 cents, he should rule in the utilities' favor. Disconnect the system. So this is a major hurdle. This is a major, major hurdle for solar and wind systems. If it ever start to get discussed in the mainstream. Because they already passed laws that mandate the connection to the grid without even addressing this fact. This as far as it has never been addressed.
You say what should the judge ask, right? No.
What is your production cost? Let's see what it costs you to produce energy. Let's compare to what it costs the solar system to produce energy, or the wind turbine to produce energy. And compare both and see which one is higher.
Also, right, he could ask them for proof that a couple of years ago when he didn't have the system in place, he was making this much and now he's making less.
Well, the other challenge here is, and I know you're going, is each time a utility customer converts to solar, is a loss of revenue to the utility. And again, this is something that you rarely hear discussed. At some point, if each customer keeps going to solar, it's going to affect the revenue of the utility. It's just basic arithmetic, right? So some physicists have woken up, and in some countries, I think in Japan they did this, after certain numbers of persons got on the grid, they stopped others' solar system from joining the grid. Because A, it's going to affect the profitability of the utility. You don't want the utility to shut down. And the second thing that it does, it affects the stability of the grid. When there's too much energy coming in and too much energy leaving, it affects the stability of a grid. So this again is another area that really needs to be looked at seriously. Not discussed in many areas, but maybe we can get the ball rolling. Let's go to number 4. What would you advise Governor Abbott to prevent the Texas system from shutting down this coming winter if the wind turbines freeze again? Well, my idea is to reduce from 15% to 5% renewable energy in the grid. That would be my idea.
Oh, also maybe they should have some kind of backup. Well, they should have a little bit of overabundance, so in case it goes below.
Yeah, backup. They might have backup systems, but again, backup systems are enormously expensive. Those with battery packs, I think the battery pack that Tesla sold to Australia was $20 million for one, and then it caught fire. So they are enormously expensive, and they don't store that much energy. They can run out in like one day. So the storage of energy in these energy in batteries is a really major hurdle. Really major hurdle. That's tough. That's really tough to overcome. Huge challenge. Need massive improvement in that area. And the last answer, how many different byproducts of fossil fuels are in use worldwide? 6,000. Not 6 or 60 or 600. 6,000. Now that's a lot. I mean, when I first heard this and started going to the list, I mean, I couldn't believe it because I kept hearing people saying, we need to get rid of fossil fuels. So what are we going to do for fertilizers, right? We need fertilizers to feed the earth, to grow food, to feed the poor. So this is a tremendous advantage for fossil fuels that renewable energies cannot match. Renewable energies have no comparable byproduct list. None. And that's just, it's a harsh reality, but it's just a fact. All right, let's go to the next slide and see what we have here. This is a chart that shows most of the European countries. At the top it has South Australia. At the bottom it has the United States. And the percentages, the figures, the numbers there you see are the energy costs per kilowatt hour. I think Germany has now surpassed them all, and Germany is now in the lead. This chart is from a few years ago. But the association is pretty clear. When you examine the countries worldwide, the ones with the higher percentage of solar and wind systems in their grid have higher energy costs. And there's an association. We mentioned the second law of thermodynamics, which scientifically explains it. Something that is more inefficient is going to cost more. Do less work, it's going to cost more. That's just the science. And there's, it's a tough challenge that we face.
South Australia, okay.
Yeah, South Australia, Germany, Denmark, Italy. I mean, these countries went aggressively into renewable energies. United States, we're not the bottom. In the United States, California is the #1 state in renewable energy. And guess what? They have the highest energy rates in the country. So there's an association, and then there's a lot of science that explains the association. Hard to test. It's hard to test these things scientifically. This would be a very expensive test, but again, when you have several associations in different areas around the world, it's time to make a claim if they all point in the same direction. And this is a chart. We mentioned earlier those 3 numbers. Workers required to produce the same amount of electric power. This is a chart that's from the DOE. And again, it just shows you the significant difference in efficiency between solar and natural gas, and between solar and coal. So where do we go from here? I think the best way forward is a combination use of both fossil fuel and renewable energies. And I like to speak carefully about God's earth. I believe God made the earth and set up processes in the earth. One of the processes, it produces this liquid that we mine and use to power our cars and power our economies. And for those of you that believe in the good old book, the Bible. There's this great story about Noah building the ark, and God told him specifically, when you make the ark, pitch it within and without with pitch. What is pitch? When you go and look up the definition of the pitch, you go down, you will see the pitch is a part of the production of petroleum. And so therefore, it was no coincidence, therefore, that there's so much oil in the Middle East. It was there from the beginning. So that was the first time you can make the claim that fossil fuel, you believe in that story as I do, fossil fuel literally saved humanity from extinction. The ark sailed on the water. Everything outside it drowned, most of us believe. And the pitch prevent the water from leaking in. We just talked about the pandemic and the PPEs that protected the doctor from infection. So you could really make the claim that fossil fuels saved humanity from extinction twice. Now, why would you want to get rid of something like that? That's such a great track record. There's no case for getting rid of it, 100%. A hybrid use of both, in my opinion, is the best way forward. And if you go to Paramos, you see the utility in Paramos actually has solar panels on the electricity poles, which I think is a better system than having solar in the homes after a certain point. I think the exact number that physicists have identified at 30% of grid penetration is when the significant negative effects start to be seen on a grid. So below 30%, there's not a huge impact overall, even though in Texas, the 15%, when that was reduced, everything shut down. Some people claim that wasn't the total fault. But definitively, at 30%, there's no denying the negative impact on the grid. So if you are in an area, they're rolling out solar, and they establish a net metering system, you can benefit. You want to be one of the first ones to go and sign up, because at some point, they're going to stop accepting people to put their solar systems on the grid. That will happen in any country, anywhere in the world. At some point, they'll cut it off. So you want to be one of the first ones to sign up and give thanks if you did, because there is a benefit that you can get away with for now if you can resell your expensive energy to the utility with expensive in quotes. So there we have it, Dr. Derek. The best way forward is a hybrid system, I think. And our challenges are here to be met and tackled. And let's put our minds and hearts together and geniuses and see what we can come up with.
Wonderful, wonderful. All right, thank you very much, Sir Paul McFarlane.